The macro level problem I chose to address is childhood poverty. Um, Poverty is an issue as old as time, and yet we still have not been able to find a solution to alleviating childhood poverty and the implications that come along with it. For my project, I decided to specifically focus on childhood poverty in the United States, although it is definitely a global issue. Um, I'll begin with the presentation by first giving some basic information about childhood poverty in the United States. Children in the United States experience poverty at higher rates than most developed nations. Um, Poverty is defined as those making less than the poverty threshold set by the federal government. In the United States alone, 11.9 children are currently living in poverty. This is just a pictogram depicting some poverty statistics in the United States. And so you can see things like 1 in 5 poor children receive cash aid in the United States. It says that 22% of all children, including 39% of African American children, 35% of Latino, and 12% of white children experience poverty. There are countless consequences of childhood poverty at all levels. The micro level, they include food insecurity, homelessness, and increased likelihood to experience ACEs or adverse childhood events. At the meso level, they include intergenerational cycles of poverty, high crime rates, and unsafe neighborhoods. And at the macro level, when children drop out of school early or they don't receive the best education, they aren't able to go to college or trade schools or whichever. And so the lack of skilled workers that are in the workforce is decreased. And childhood poverty costs $1.03 trillion per year to the United States. This is just a picture of a woman and her children who are homeless on the street. Homelessness, as I discussed in the last slide, is one of the implications of childhood poverty. Over 1 million children experience homelessness in the United States each year. Because the implications of poverty during childhood are so great, my solution is to have a federally sponsored child allowance for all children under the age of 18. There would be 4 aspects of this allowance. It would be reoccurring, a cash payment, individual, and unconditional, meaning that it wouldn't be means tested or have any requirements. I think this is important because children have no choice. They have no say in the level of income they are born into. Of course, like when they turn whatever the working age in their state is, they could get a job and support themselves. But while doing my project, I found that students who work longer hours in high school are more likely to have lower academic levels, more likely to engage in negative behaviors, and less likely to engage in extracurricular activities. And these are all things that all children should have a chance to do just because a child is born into a family with low socioeconomic status doesn't mean that they should be deprived of that. The income, this cash allowance that I propose that children should receive would be given to the parents, of course, while the child is still young, but I think to keep them from working or having to work, when they reach the legal age, 10% of that allowance would be given to them so that they could provide for their own wants, like, I don't know, like going to the movies with their friends or not. Like, that shouldn't be something that a child should be deprived of just because their parents don't have the money to do that for them. The amount of money each child were to receive would depend on the cost of living in the specific state. This is so that a child who is living in a more expensive state, like New York, isn't receiving the same amount of allowance as a child living in a state like Mississippi, where the cost of living is much lower. So I think it's a solution that could work. And yeah, thank you.